morning.
You're a band?
Okay, we're up to Mishnah Daf Mem. Mishnah Daf Mem. Hamafke Paris Eitzel Chaveroi. Some goes ahead and he trusts his friend to watch his Paris. I would say Yoitzel Loi Chisroinus. When he returns it to him, right, he can go ahead and deduct the normal amount of depreciation. What's the normal amount of depreciation? Lechitim ula oires, for wheat and for, again, the big machloikis what oires is. I'll touch it as rice. Right? Some people, the article says millet, I'll touch it as rice. Oires, tisha chatzi kavim, 9.5 kavim, likur. Now a core is 180 kavim. So 9 halves will be 1 out of 40 would be right at 2.5%. The soirin uladaychin for what? For soirin for barley uladaychin rye. What is it? It's something. Tisha kavim likur. That would be what? That would be 5%. 9 kavim per core. 9 out of 180. The kusmin that's kusmin is spelt. Ulazera pishtan, and for flaxseed, shoyle so likur. The amount that usually goes ahead and deteriorates is 3 sa to a core, which is like 10%. Akolafi amida, everything goes according to the midah. Akolafi asman, everything according to the time. So basically, this is, I think, according to the time is a year. The chain, right? Rashi says, akolafi midah, the chain l'chol kur v'kur. In other words, depending upon how many kurim that you go ahead and figure it does matter chesroinus. Now, guys, there's one question before we begin anything. What are you talking about? If someone entrusts you to watch something, when you return it, you're returning what? With depreciation? Whatever he gives you, you return it to him. Like, what do you mean? You can't use it. You can't use it. So what do you mean that, what does that mean? So we have to see in the Gemara. So the Pashat Kasha, guys, someone entrusts you to watch something, whatever he gave it to you to watch, whatever depreciation, watch. What kind of cheshbon are you making over here that you'll deduct? In other words, you gave me X amount, I'll give you back less. Why are you giving him back less? Give him back whatever he gave to you. Good. Now, Rabbi Yochanan Nuri says, in other words, you're giving percentages. What is whatever is there, the akvarim are going to eat. In other words, there's a certain amount they will eat. It doesn't depend upon how much is there, right? No matter how much is there, that's what they're going to eat. You have X amount of mice, that's what they're going to eat. So what kind of proportion are you giving these 9 halves, 9 kav, 3? What? Right? You only go ahead for 1 core. That's it. There's no proportion. 1 core, and you go ahead for that core. You go ahead and you make the deduction from 1 core, not from 2, not from 3. There's no proportion over here. There's just deductions from 1 core. In other words, Yochanan Nuri agrees there's a chesaron, but the chesaron is based upon the 1 core because again, the akvarim only eat a certain amount. Okay, now Rabbi Yehuda, there's Rabbi Yehuda says, if it's if it's a big midah, we'll see in the Gemara how much that is. Then you don't go ahead and be mitzvah chesroinus. It seems that in the winter it expands a little bit, so you don't have to go ahead and take away chesroinus. Says Rashi, 10 kurim, you won't go ahead and make deductions. Why do they expand? Should be most in the time of the threshing season. You're going to go ahead and give them what? You're going to give them dried wheat. And in the winter, when you return it, they expand. The moisture expands it. And whatever the mice eat, that doesn't go ahead and detract too much. They don't eat so much from Yud Kurim. Hilkach nifkasu mishalemis kasarin hamigil l'shnei kurim or the shleisha shakvarim meichlim. That's the cheshbon. Now, it's very interesting. This dialogue between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda ben Nuri. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says the following: why is it proportional? the mice eat X amount. You're telling me the mice, if there's more food, there'll be more mice eating. It depends. No, they eat X amount. So if you look at Taisus says something interesting. So Taka, what's the reason for guys for the Rabbanan? Why is there a proportion based upon the amount of food? In other words, the more there is, the more the chesaron. It's a proportion. Where's their proportion? Says the Yerushalmi, Hani. This is fascinating. Hani achvari rishiyuninu. These achvarim, they're rishoyim. The meister rishoyim. Right? Why? Kadchamayu ibor. When they see a lot, leimistayu, it's not enough the achli that they eat. Elekarin lechavreyan, they call over their friends the achli mahem. They fabreng. They call them more mice. That's the reason. They call them more mice. So Yerushalmi tells you why. Proportionally, if there's more food, you can have more chesroinus because it's fascinating. You see what happens that they go after that. What?
Read that tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll see the end of Taisus in a minute. Okay, so now, so the Gemara says, Oireis tuva chaser. Oireis is missing more than that amount. You said Oireis, the proportion of Oireis you gave as what? As 5%. It's more. We're speaking about Olaf that was what? That was shelled. It was shelled, and therefore the chesaron is not so much if it's shelled. I heard a very interesting Meiser Rav from the Gra. Very fascinating Meiser Rav. There's a machloikis what oires is. Is it millet or is it rice? My nafkamina. On rice, you make a barimina mizaynis, and the nachbrach is barin nefashos. Right? So the Gemara in this is a Gemara in Ketzim Mevarchim, it's a Shaila. So the Gra said it's rice, and the Gra proved it. He went ahead. How do you prove it? According to this proportion over here. He said the Gemara says that Oires, the proportion of Oires is Tisha Chatzi Kavim Likur. And he went ahead and he made that proportion. If it was millet, it would have been a different proportion. It worked out, so he knew it was rice. He took rice and he put that amount, and proportionally, that's the amount it got lost, and therefore he knew Iris is rice. In the Maisarav, so it says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Pishtan Gimel Sayin Lakor for spelt, and Zera Pishtan, which is flaxseed Gimel Sayin Lakor. Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Chia, Zera Pishtan Bigvulin Shana. We're speaking about when they're still in their husks. The Tanya Namihachi Lakusmil Zera Pishtan Bigvulin when they're still in their husks. What's the difference? Rashi says Zera Pishtan Bigvulin Chaser Kol Kach. They lose the Fisha Gvulin Misyavshim because the husks they dry out. The Neiflim they fall away. Ruach Minashvason, and the wind goes ahead and blows them away. It doesn't go ahead and detract the proportion so much. So the portion of the Mishnah is giving on flaxseed that is it's in its husk. Says the Gemara, and oires and rice that's not kolif, that's not peeled, shleisha soyin l'kor. Proportionally, by every core, when the Mishnah said that kol core goes according to what the amount, that proportion they gave in the Mishnah is for each core, and the time span seems to be a year. Rabbi Nuri said, what are you talking about? That what difference does it make? The mice are only going to eat X amount. So he said all proportions are based upon what? On a core. All proportions based upon a core. That's the portion. Whatever, it's no matter what, it's only based. You could have 10 core, it doesn't make a difference. The proportion is going to be based upon a core. We're not going to proportion X amount per core. It's only be one core, because again, that's what now. Rabbi Yochanan Kama Mida Maruba. Did I skip? I did skip. Rabbi Yochanan Harbe Oivdois Mehen, Harbe Mispasiv Zehen. In other words, what did they tell him? Guys, what did the Chum tell him? You're only taking into account what the loss of a mouse. You're only taking into account the loss of a mouse, right? But there are other losses. It gets refazer, it gets lost naturally. So that's what they told him. Now Tosfos told you a different reason, correct? Taisus tells you because the mice go ahead, and so our Gemara is not giving the same teretz as Taisus. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri said that you're going to go according to what? A core, because the mice eat X amount. The Chum retorted to him, guess what? You just can't take that only a mouse. There's other ways of these things getting, they lose naturally, or they spazzy, they get spread around. So Freg Taisus Akasha, if the Yerushalmi says this reason, what's the Gemara giving this reason? Let's now see Taisus again. Okay, we gave that shot. In the middle of Taisus. Yerushalmi tells you the reason that the Rishayim and the portion goes, they invite their friends to come and eat more. So what's what he's telling over here? The reason is because it gets lost. Says the Gemara. They were answering the words of Rabbi Yochanan and Nuri. Afilu less than time with them Farish Yerushalmi, even though you don't agree with Yerushalmi, in other words, the Yerushalmi is the real reason. The reason why it goes proportionally is why? It's because the mice are Rishayim, they're going to go in and invite more. But you who say that what? You who say that the mice eat X amount, you're not taking into account it gets spread around, the natural losses. So the Gemara here is answering what? Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, according to what he said. You're like Rabbi Yochanan Nuri, the only thing you took into account was mice. Says the Chachamim, you can take in other things. But the real reason for the Chachamim is what? The mice are Chevraman. Okay? If you see one in your house, you're lucky. Because you only see one, there's always more. There's always more. Okay. So, now, when is this whole Mishnah speaking, guys? She'irvun in peirosav. That's if he mixed it in with his peiros. In other words, he entrusted him to what something, and he took that and he mixed it in with his peiros. Yeah, you could do it. And there's Yachid like Karen Zavius. If he told him, if he was miyakid at Karen Zavius, the Shema said, mix it in. The balapakad. Aval Yachid like Karen Zavius. Guess what? Okay, now you still have a kasha, guys. Outside. If you take a barrel of X and you go ahead, you give it to the guy, you put it in the corner, this whole mission doesn't exist. This is what it is. Whatever takes place in the barrel, mice come in the barrel, whatever it is, I'm taking this and I'm giving it back to you. That's it. I'm taking it and giving it back to you. So good. So Fred, and for the Gemara, you know what it's speaking about? Where you mixed it in with your stuff. So what do? You're taking a chesroinus, right? You're making deductions. Why are you making deductions? Proportionally. You gave me 10 bushels. I mixed it in with 100 bushels. I get 90. You take 10. Where's these proportions coming in, right? That's the Gemara's next kasha is. Says the Gemara, "V'chi irvun in peirosav my have lichsi lididei kama have." Right? So, in other words, let's see how much is there. In other words, the assumption is that you didn't touch it. The assumption is you didn't touch it. So Ari gives me 10 bushels of peiros to watch. I mix it in with my 100 bushels of peiros. So he's entitled to his 10, right? So what's the reason? So let me return the 10 to him. Says, I use them. I mean, I have 90 of them, right? I use them, right? So I use them. That says so let's see how much I used. In other words, there's 100 altogether. 90 is mine, 10 is his. If I use 10, so I get 80, and it gets 10. The same thing. Proportionally, the Gemara wants to know. You made these proportions. Where are they coming from? Says, I'll tell you where. The lo yediyah kames stapik. You don't know how much he lost. I don't know. When you don't know how much, then you have to go ahead and go through the chesronis. So this whole Mishnah, guys, is in Ukimta. Guys, the whole Mishnah is in Ukimta. All these chesronis. One, he had to tell you that you mixed it with peiros. Two, and you have to know that you don't know how much you used. Two Ukimtas for this whole Mishnah to take place. Rabbi Yehuda says, if the midah was meruba, then what? If the Gemara is going to tell you how much, 10 kurim, then there's no proportion. Kama mida meruba. How much is mida meruba? Amar Rabbi Rav Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Asara kurim, 10 kurim. You have 10 kurim, and then you don't go ahead and make deductions. So again, as we said, in the goyrin, time of goyrin, it's dry, and then when you return it when it's wet. So what? It's expands. It expands. Hanyanami hachi. Kama mida meruba. How much is the big mida? Is asara kurim. Tani Tana Kamed Rav Nachman, a reciter of Bryce, said in front of Rav Nachman, Mamurim, Shemadin Loy Mitoich Groinoi. When he went ahead and he used kalim of the goyrim, which are larger. In other words, when do we say this? He measured initially. He measured how much use. It seems to be there's different kalim, guys. There's a kalim we use mitoich a goyrim, and there's kalim we use mitoich a house. They're both called. Let's say they're both called an ounce. Give me a fluid ounce. An ounce. Okay, this is an ounce and it's an ounce. The ounce of the goyrin is more than the ounce of the house. Good. So when does they have chesroinus is when they return this using the same kli. If you use the larger kli and then he makes a cheshbon based upon the smaller kli, you're not going to go ahead and give him chesroinus. So you give me a large amount and I accept it, and you give me a large amount and you accept to take back a smaller amount. Read the Gemara. Said, what are you telling me over here? The guy's an idiot? The guy's a fool? Rashi says he's going to give you a large and accept back a small amount. No, so what are you telling me? Guys, you're telling me the following. So if he gives you 10 bushels, you can give him back 5, and that's good. Are you dealing with a guy who accepts that amount? If it doesn't make any sense. So in other words, in that case, you wouldn't have to give chesroinus. In the case where he gave you using the larger measure, and you returned it using the smaller measure, then you don't have to give chesroinus. Read the Gemara, you're dealing with a guy who's a fool. He's going to go ahead and take back less than he gave you. Says the Gemara, the yoiv b'kaili rabba v'shakli b'kaili suta. That's the kasha, guys. Right? You have the kasha. Okay, one more time. There's 2 kalim. They're both the same amount. So when he gave it to you, he gave you using the larger measure. Says the Brisa, when you return it using a smaller measure, then you don't have to give chesroinus. Fred the Gemara, which fool is going to take back a smaller amount that you say you don't have to give chesroinus? Says the Gemara, you're right. It's not speaking about 2 different kalim. It's speaking about 2 different times. It's using the same size kli. You're using the same size kli, but you returned it in the time of the goyrin, right? So if you maybe it's speaking at the time of the goyrin when you returned it, and here's the way you read the brisa. The medamam amurim. When do you take away chesroinus? Shemad lebi mais goyrin. The hichsav mais goyrin. Then you go ahead and since it's at the same time period of the same moisture or lack of moisture, then you have to take chesroinus. Avamad lebi mais goyrin when it's dry. The hichsav lebi mais geshamim, and you return it in the winter when it's wet. Eina yaitz lechesroinus. You know why? Because it expands. So that's what it's telling me. It doesn't mean goyrin means using the kli of the goyrin and returning in the kli of the bias. It means the be made goyrin and you return made goyrin, that it's the same consistency, right? That it's both dry, and therefore the only chesaron is going to be because of the mefazer or because of the mice. But when you return it in the season of when it's wet, then the natural moisture will make it expanded, and therefore you won't have any chesaron whatsoever. Only a pabal abaya imkain. If you're telling me that in the goyrin where it's dry, you put it in a barrel, and then it comes back and expands in the winter, kadahave, right? It should blow up. Imkain lifka kada. I didn't mean it correct. Imkain lifka kada. It should be burst. Why? Because it's expanding. Says Gemara, there was a situation that happened. You give him a barrel. Guess what happened? It expanded and the barrel burst. They would go ahead and compress it in the barrel very much. When something's compressed and there's no room to grow, so you have the same volume, but it doesn't expand. Okay. Now we're going to have the same Mishnah. However, this is with liquid measurements. This is what with wine, with shemen. This is speaking about liquid measurements. Okay. Yaitza. Yoitza loy shtus liyayin. You go ahead. If a person entrusts you to watch wine, and you mix it in with your wine, and when you go ahead, the barrel of your wine will go ahead and absorb a shtus, a sixth. So the amount they give you, you're going to deduct this. You're going to go ahead and return it, right? You're going to return it like less a sixth. You're going to, it takes into account. In other words, he gave you X amount, you return less a sixth. Rabbi Yehuda a fifth. So he's a little more. Yoitzel shloishes lugin shemen lemeya. Yoitzel shloishes lugin shemen lemeya. For 100 loig, you deduct. If a guy gives you 100 loig to watch, you can return 97. He gives you 100 loig to watch, you return 97. You deduct 3. Loigu mechza shmarim, loigu mechza bala. And here's the cheshbin: 1.5 loig for the leads for the shells, the peels, and loigu mechza bala, and 1.5 for what? For the absorption. 1.5, a total of 3 guys. So for 100 loig, you're going to deduct, when you return it, you're going to deduct 3. 1.5 for 1.5. And how shemen mezukik, if the shemen was pure, meaning it didn't have leads, then you don't have to go ahead and deduct for shvarim, because there's no shmarim. And if the barrels that the oil is being stored in, fellas, was saturated, and therefore it's not going to absorb any yoitzel bala, then in other words, this 3 in 100 is not set in stone. It would depend upon the type of oil, depend upon the type of barrel. Good. I guess if it's a shemen zakuk in a saturated barrel, then you give exactly what you got, because there's no deductions made. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, af hamoicha shemen mezukuk el chaveiroi kol yomais hashana. Let's say a guy takes a contract. I'm going to keep the shemen in my house, and I'm going to provide for you pure oil throughout the year. So I'm not giving you 100 the core of loig oil. I'll provide for you throughout the year. I say makabel love, the lekeach accepts upon himself loigu mechsa shmarim lemeya. Even though, guys, he's buying shemen zakuk, right? Even though he's buying shemen zakuk, nonetheless he's makabel upon himself that what he's going to accept a deduction of 1.5. For 100, he's going to get 1.5. He's only going to get 98.5 spread out throughout the year, even though it's shemen zakuk. Like the Chachamim mashma, shemen zakuk, you should get 100, right? Again, Rabbi Yehuda, when Rabbi Yehuda said you're getting 98.5, you're deducting 1.5 per 100. Like the Chachamim, it's mashma, you're going to get the full 100, right? That's important for the end of the daf. Now, one person said, the Tanakama said 1/6 you deduct, and Rabbi Yehuda said 1/5 you deduct. V'lei pligi, they're not arguing. Marki asrei, umarki asrei. Each one depending upon his locale, right? Basrei demar in the Tanakama said 1/6. Chafu bikira, v'lei mayitz tfei. They would line the barrels with wax, and therefore they only absorbed 1/6. Ba'asrei demar in Rabbi Yehuda's locale, chafi bekufra. They lined the barrel with tar or pitch, or mayitz tfei, and it absorbed 1/5. So therefore it's more. But they're not arguing. Iba Yasema, another difference between the two, Mishum Gergushta, right? One they use clay. Ha mayitz tvei, v'lei mayitz tvei. One goes ahead and absorbs more, and one absorbs less. Basiv Yehuda Rami Arbaim. Okay, that's the okay, good. I know the Gemara is a little, just it is what it is. It's technical, but I think it's pretty self understood, right? Okay. Next piece is very basic arithmetic. Okay, now, Rabbi Yehuda, Asid Rabbi Yehuda, in the locale of Rabbi Yehuda's place, Ramu Arboyim Vitamne Kuze Bidana. You could get, a kuz is a shear, and for 48 kuz, Bidana, you can get for what? Azal Dana Bishisha. So in the place of Rebbe of 48 kuz, bidana of a barrel, Azal Dana Bishisha zuz. So 8 kuz per zuz. You have 48, right? And a six zuz would get you 48 kuz. So if you do the math, right? If 6 zuz would get you 48 kuz, it's 8 kuz per zuz, right? Yeah, say it right. You're right. But 8 times 6 is 48. You got it, guys. Very important. So it's 8. You get per 48 kuz. You're gonna for six zuz, you're gonna get 48 kuz, and meaning what each one will buy you 8 kuz. Good. Now, Paras of Yehuda, Shisa Bezuza. He would go ahead and he would sell a kuz for 6 zuz. He would, instead of 8, right? He bought it for, he's being marviach, right? He's 6 kuz for 1 zuz for 6. Instead of getting 8, you'd only get 6 kuz. Instead of 8, you'd only get 6. He's in business, right? You only get now. At which point in time does he start making a profit? 6 times 6, 36, right? So he's gonna have 12 left over. Shisa bezuza, on the base. Dal tilsa v'shisa. If you go ahead 6 times 6, and that's going to give 36, and now is his profit margin. So Pasha, you have left over Tresa. You left over 12. 48 minus 6, you have left off 12. Now, Dal Timnaya Shtuse, again, 1/6 of 48. You're going to go ahead and make the deduction of the normal loss. 1/6 of 48 will give you what? Pasha Arba. 12 minus 8 is 4. And that's what you get for. He's going to make 4 zuz. Now he could have made. We're going to see. Shmuel hamistaker al yistaker yisrael shtus. So in other words, you shouldn't overcharge more than a 6th. So why did Rabbi Yehuda only make a 12th? He only made a 12th. Right? He made what? A quarter of 48. He made 4 out of 48. It's 12. So l'chari he made half of what he could have made. He only made half of what he could have made. He could have made more. So the Gemara answers, Ikka Gulfi Ushmaria. He went ahead and he when he bought the wine, he went ahead and he got the shmar, the shot. In other words, he got the barrel and the shmarim. He hachi nafish like tfei mishtos. They made a little more than a shtos. So it says Ikka tircha udamei priznaisa. There's the tircha involved, and the priznaisa is the guy who tapped into the barrel. So Memela, it worked out to a 6th. Now, the Mishnah said, right? If the Sheva was mizukuk, so we had what? Then he does not have to go ahead and 1.5. He doesn't only not yotz of the shmarim is mizukuk. And if it was if it was barrel was old, then you don't go for the barrel. You don't. Again, there's 2 deductions, guys. There's three loig per 100, right? That was it.
3%.
Yeah, it was 3 per 100, right? Right. Okay, so it's 3 per 100. Now, how'd you get the 3? 1.5 or 1.5. 1.5 for the shmarim, the deduction, and 1.5 watt for the barrel. Fred the Gemara. How can you not say it's not possible that it shouldn't absorb anything? Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman bin Musufafim Shanu. It's speaking where they were lined. The barrels were lined. Since they were lined, it's possible they don't absorb anything. Amar Baya filu temish like Musufafim. You could even say they were not Musufafim. Kivon did tayin. In other words, there's a point where the barrel absorbs so much that it's totally saturated. These barrels are very old barrels, and they were saturated. Okay. Next part of Gemara is I'll work it out. The next part of Gemara. Okay. What did Rabbi Yehuda say in the Mishnah? Guys, let's go back to the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda says even shemen that's mezukik, you can go ahead and deduct 1.5. You only give him 98.5, right? And the Chum Pasha said 100. Where does Rabbi Yehuda say you have a right to go ahead and deduct, right? How does that work out? Okay, says the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Afa moiche shemen mizukik lechaveroi kol yimas hashana. Right. Then you can go ahead and take 1.5 off. Harizem mekabel alav, the person who buys it, loigu mechsa shmarim lemeya. He is mekabel the deduction of 1.5 loig for 100. So you're going to get 98.5. And the Chum say you can't deduct. Amr Abaya. Hishetim Saloima, when you look at the Mishnah, But Rabbi Yehuda, according to the words of Rabbi Yehuda, mutar la'arev shmarim. It must be that he holds that you're permitted to go ahead and put shmarim in. After all, that's what shmarim guys is one again. 1.5 for shmarim guys, 1.5 for the barrel. So you're telling Shem Mizukik you can duck 1.5. It must be he holds that what you can stick in shmarim. In other words, shmarim is the deduction of 1.5. So therefore, from his words, that you on clear shemen you can deduct 1.5. It must be it's mutter to mix in 1.5. L'divrei chachamim who say that 100 is 100. It must be asal shmarim. It must be it's asal to shmarim. Now the Gemara is going to go destroy this, but guys, outside, just basic setup. Rabbi Yehuda says if you sell a person, it's a futures for the year. You're going to provide for the year. You're going to provide 100 loig of shemen. You can give him 98.5 loig of pure shemen. I'm going to say you have to give him 100. So it's mashma that light Rabbi Yehuda, if you go ahead and sell him regular shemen, that is, we're going to see, regular shemen that is pretty much clean, you can throw in 1.5. Since you sell pure oil, you're able to go ahead and throw in 1.5. If you have a pure, you sold the guy regular oil and he thinks it's regular, he thinks it's zakik, it's really not, but he thinks it is. If there's shmarim on the bottom, you'll be able to go ahead and stir it up. Why? Because he's deducting that anyway. Like the chachamim, that you're not making the deduction if he anticipates getting pure oil, even though you never contracted for pure oil, but it was oil settled, you won't be able to go ahead and mix it up. That's the basic Gemara. Now, the Rabbi Yehuda mutal arv shmar, and what does that mean? That it's at the bottom you're able to go ahead and mix it up. Behind time mil the makabels, because the guy he accepts 1.5. The amalei, because the meicha can say to him, if I wanted to mix it, I could, because after all, I'm able to deduct 1.5. Of course I could have. So Hashana Mekabel. So even though now, guys, this sediment is settled at the bottom, and Pashtus is so there's no deduction, since by Shem and Zokik, where there is no Shmarim, you still have to be Mekabel. Certainly with the Shmarim on the bottom, you have to be Mekabel. Yeah. In other words, you have to be Mekabel the deduction out of 100 log, you have to be Mekabel 1.5. That's what it's saying. Don't think that it's settled. I can make the deduction. When it says over here he can mix in a facetious way, it's not saying he's going to stir it up. It means you have to makabel that amount. You have to makabel that amount. That's the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Let the makabel say to the meicher, arvis lay. If you would have gone ahead and mixed it in, have you misdavenly? Pasha was speaking about a chenvani, a guy who's buying it to sell. So now he's telling the following. Had you sold it to me mixed in, when I sold it, I could have sold it mixed in. Now that I bought it when it's separate, what am I going to do with the shmarim? What am I going to do with the shmarim? Says the Gemara, let the moicha say to the makabel say to the moicher, if you would have mixed in the shmarim, havi misdavenly, I would be able to go ahead and sell it. But what am I going to do with it now? No one's going to buy sediment. So therefore, don't mix it in. So now the Balabayas answers, 1 second. And for the Gemara, we're not speaking about a moicher. We're not speaking about a chenvani. We're speaking about a Balabayas. Balabayas wants what? Right? The Nichale B'tzila, he wants good, right? He's buying it for his house. Therefore, he doesn't have this taina of what I could have sold it. The Malay, let the Makabel say to the Meicher, midaloi arvisli achuli achlele. When you didn't mix it in, you were Meichel, and therefore I shouldn't have to give you 1.5. Again, the case is he didn't sell him Shem and Zakik, but it was settled. Yeah. So he's saying when you didn't go ahead and mix it in, maybe you were Meichel. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda goes according to some reasoning, the less than Mechila. Rabbi Yehuda does not hold the Mechila. That nan. If a person sells a person a yoke, he's selling the thing that holds the oxen together. Like he didn't go ahead and sell the ox, he just sold the yoke. If he sold the baka, right? Rabbi Yehuda says, you look at the money. Ketzad, Amalai machalit simdecha b'masayim zuz. Sell me a yoke for 200 zuz. Hadavi yadua sheinat semed b'masayim zuz. That's very expensive for a yoke. Like it's not a designer yoke, right? So obviously he's buying what? He's buying the oxen with the yoke. No raya. Why? Because the person can be Michael on it. So you see from Rabbi Yehuda holds that what everything is very exact. So he's not the mechila. So you can't say Taina over here. I thought that since you sold it to me without mixing it, you're Michael on the one and a half. You're not Michael on the 1.5 because he doesn't hold the mechila. Okay, so according to right now, we said Rabbi Yehuda must hold that what you can always make the deduction no matter what. You can make the deduction. Now what did the Chacham say? You bought 100 of zakuk of zakuk. What do you get? You get 100 of zakuk. That's what you get. The divrei chachamim asal arif shmarim. You can't mix it, but because what you paid for is not what you get. Behind the time of loy makabel, and that's the reason why he doesn't have to accept it. The lekech does not have to accept the deduction of 1.5. The malay, because the makabel can say to the meicher, he boyes la ruve. If you wanted to mix it in. Would you be able to do it now? You won't be able to do it now. Again, guys, if he bought Shemin Zakuk 100 like the Chachamim, what would he get? 100 like. So now that it's not mixed in, I expect it to get Shemin Zakuk, right? So you can mix it in. So therefore, I don't have to settle for anything. Damalei, Iboyla Ruve. If you would have wanted to mix it by Shem and Zakuk, so Hashtanami, now that it's not mixed together, I'm not going to accept it from you. So again, we're going like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim in Shem and Zakuk, that the Chacham, Rabbi Yehuda says 98.5, you deduct 1.5. And the Chacham say 100, no deduction. We're arriving at what happens if the sediment is settled to the bottom. Do you have to accept any 1.5 sediment or not? Says Rabbi Yehuda, you do. Says the Chachamim, you don't. Amar Papa Abayas. Now, this question says Papa to Abaya. Adarabba. What are you saying? Again, what did Abaya say, guys? Kishatim Saloimar. When Rabbi Yehuda says that it's you have to make a deduction of 1.5. It's much to mix it up. The Chachamim say since it's asa, it's 100, it's asa to mix it up. Says Papa to Abaya. I can say an opposite svara. Who said 100 for 100? Maybe it's mutalar shmarim. You could mix it up. What's the reason that the lekeach doesn't have to accept it? Because the lekeach can tell the meicher when you didn't go ahead and mix it. No, really, you should be able to mix it, but since you didn't. So in other words, you're not locked into saying Hava Hatalia, that the case of Shemin Zakuk and the case of the oil and the sediment setting is the same case. I could say by 100 Zakuk you get 100, and nonetheless over here maybe you would be permitted to go ahead and mix it together. So why do I not have to accept deductions? Because I thought you were Michael. And we saw the Chachamim hold by the Mishnah of the Tzemid Bakar that the money is not Mechiach. Why? Because a person could be Michael on some money. It's not exact. But now, the Rabbi Yehuda and the words of Rabbi Yehuda, I could say also Lar Shmarim. It's also to mix it. In other words, in this case, you don't have to. You wouldn't be able to. You wouldn't have a deduction. Final time in the Makabel. That's the reason, because the Makabel can say Damalei. You can tell that the Damalei, because the Meicha can say to the Makabel. If I wanted to mix it, like Shari Ruve, I wouldn't be able to mix it. So Kibuli le Makablis, and now one more time. L'dir Reb Yehuda asal arev shmarim behind the time of the Makabel, and how come you have to go ahead and be Makabel by a 1.5? In other words, guys, if you hold it's asa to mix up, why in the case of Stolol throughout the year, Zakuk, you have to accept 1.5? 1.5, right? What's the reason you have to set 1.5? If I'm not able to mix it, so why do I have to accept 1.5? Damalei, iboyla ruve. If I wanted to mix it, like shari le ruvilcha, you wouldn't been allowed to do it. Kibulu lemekabel, and therefore what? You wouldn't accept it. Zavin tagora ikri. I had problems with this earlier. One more time. Really, it's asa to mix it up. So now, what are you telling me? If it's asa to mix it up, and where is my profit? I didn't make any money. Bishlema, if the shmarim I can deduct for that, that's my profit margin, that 1.5. That's my profit margin. But if I can't make that profit, even though it's asa to mix up, where's my profit? So therefore, really, it's asa to mix up. But the reason why you can charge him is where's his profit if he can't do it? Right. So you're not locked into saying that what? You're not locked into say the Hava Hatalia. Hana. A person goes ahead, whether it's a lekeach, a person buys something, or a mafkid, if they're both the same lachal, lifkadim. What is lifkadim, guys? Says Rashi, likadim psoiles hagarinim. It's the refuse of the seed hatzafin al pnei shemen that floats to the top of the shemen. Okay, so there's something that floats to the top of the shemen. And, whatever it is, that's so we've been dealing now to the stuff in the bottom, the shmarim. Now we're dealing what to the junk on the top. Okay, my lifkadim. What does it mean lifkadim? As you said, like keach lifkadim have the same halacha as the mafkid. Says, what are you telling me? Just like a keach who contracted the boy does not have to accept pekadim. Mafkid nami loy mekabel pekadim. A mafkid also doesn't have to. Let the Shema say, Pikdoch my avidle. What should I do with the stuff? Again, your stuff is mixed with my stuff. What am I supposed to do with it? So obviously, what? You have to go ahead and he has to be able to return it. Ella, kehechi the mafkid mikabel b'kotim, just like the person who entrusts the mafkid, the Shema, it has to accept back b'kotim. So too, lekeach nami mikabel b'kotim. In other words, lekeach is going to have to accept it. Just like the mafkid gives it to the Shema. The Shema mixed the Shemen together. And obviously the mafkid who gave it to him is going to have to accept some of the stuff floating to the top. So to Lekech will have to accept some of the stuff floating to the top. Does Lekech go ahead and have to accept the Pekotim, the stuff floating? But Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shemen Achor El Levad. They said that the chesaron of cloudy oil that you lose by having the Pekotim there. It's the Meicha is the one who sells it. He alone takes the loss. So you see the Leikeach, guys. Who takes the loss for the Pekatim? Only the Meicha. You see from here, what's the line we need? Leikeach does not have to be Mekabel Pekatim. Says the Gemara, it's different. Leikasha. The first brisa where he has to be Mekabel Pekatim speaks where he bought the oil in Tishrei. When the oil is what it's achor, it's cheaper because shakal minei benisin, and he takes it in nisin. He needed the tishrei in the same amount what according to the price of tishrei. Tishrei oil is more expensive because what tishrei the oil contains the stuff. So in other words, I gave you money in nisin for tishrei. So in tishrei, since the stuff floats to the top, I'm accepting that. So that says echad hamafkid ve'echad lekeach. Since I paid for it in Nisan, but I accepted it in Tishrei, I'm going to have to take what that pekatim of Tishrei, right? And that's the first price where you have to accept it. The second one is where he pays for it in Nisan when the oil is really good because shakim Nisan kimi did in Nisan, and therefore in that case, why he doesn't have to accept it because then it's more expensive.
This place, this is crap. There's standard business practices.
Someone said